Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My next guest is the founder and president of the Pave the Way Foundation. He's been investigating the actions of Pius XII, the wartime pope, who is often charged with ignoring the plight of Jews during the Holocaust. Gary Krupp, who himself is Jewish, recently joined us here in D.C. to share the latest evidence, his discoveries on the actions of Pope Pius XII before and during World War II. Here's my conversation with Gary Krupp. Gary, I want to start with Pope Francis, who said that the archives containing Pius XII's records of that pontificate, that they will be opened. It's supposed to happen in January. It didn't happen. What is your expectation, and what do you think researchers are going to find?
Well, I know researchers are going to find a huge amount of information. We've seen specific documents. I was able to see them, but not actually photograph them or use them because they're from the sealed section. Amazing things, like the Pope Pius XII resigned. September 6, 1943, put his letter of resignation in because they were expecting the Vatican was going to be invaded by the Nazis. God. We have all of the information on this, and then told the cardinals, checked off the names of each cardinal, that you're to go to Portugal to form a government in exile and elect a new pope, because when they come to get me, they're going to drag Eugenio Pacelli out, not Pius XII. This is 1 month before the arrest of the Roman Jews. And we have the evidence, we have the documents showing how it was Pius XII that acted directly to stop the arrest of the Roman Jews, saved 12,000 Jews in Rome.
Okay, before we get into some of this documentation, which I have to say I've never seen before, and some of it's very compelling, and I've seen a lot. Where did this legend come from then? Why is the presumption that this pope was cold, distant, didn't care about the Jews, and frankly, ignored them?
It's the most amazing piece of manipulation of media that I've ever seen. I called it the worst character assassination of the 20th century. Everybody adored this man. Every Jewish organization, every chief rabbi, every head of all of the heads of the government heads in Israel adored him. And 1963, the Russian Orthodox Church with Stalin and Khrushchev attacked Pius XII with the play The Deputy. And it was strategically rewritten by a German, it was written by a German communist, Rolf Holkoth, and then rewritten by Erwin Piscator, who was another German producer, very famous.
Big man in the theater,
and then placed in theaters around the world, all owned by communists. Devout communists. And this is what happened. And instantly the entire world changed. Then you had the historians and journalists who all of a sudden jumped on that bandwagon, because when you say something negative and something bad, you can sell books. And that's what happened. And his reputation was destroyed.
It also indicates the great power of culture.
Absolutely.
Regardless of facts, regardless of the times, it can shift a film, a play, the cultural power and the influence. Now, this has gone on for more than 40 years now.
That's exactly right.
And it persists. Now, why, before we get into the documents, why do you, as a Jewish man, have such a passion for this topic? You've been digging through these files and trying to learn the truth for so long now.
Yes.
What is it? What drives you?
2006. I grew up hating him, like everybody else.
Pius XII.
Yes, absolutely. He was Hitler's pope. He was non-caring. He cared about Vatican assets over Jewish lives, didn't speak out, all of these things which are absolutely not true, we ultimately found out. And then circumstances, providence, let us say, led me into, my wife and I, into situations where we were discovering things. And it started actually with Dan Kurzman, who wrote the book, The Secret Plot, which was the story. Dan had interviewed General Karl Wolff prior to his death on the plot, which I actually have the testimony
from Germany. We're going to show that first.
Of the plot to kidnap Pius XII and kill the Roman Curie, kill all the cardinals, and seize the Vatican. And we have documents within the acts and documents of the Holy See where they were planning, what do we do if the Germans come in?
When they invade.
With the museum, with the library. How do we protect these things?
Wow. And tell us, how many Jewish lives were holed up in the Vatican?
Oh, in the Vatican, it varied.
And Vatican installations.
In Vatican, well, first of all, between Catholic families and Vatican facilities, there's an estimated 12,000 Jews at October 16th, 1943. About 8,000 from the original Roman Jewish community, then 5,000 from other countries. And they were being protected. And the life-saving efforts were incredible. I managed to do it in one day. That's the most amazing thing.
How was that possible? What did they do?
They sent, first of all, the papacy sent letters out, requests, which were with instructions to burn the letters. Why? You're in a war.
Right.
You're in ground zero. You're surrounded by hostile forces. You're surrounded by, and infiltrated by spies. And they were instructed to burn these letters, but they said, do everything you can do to help the Jews and help the others who were being persecuted. We have diary entries from different convents.
Oh, wow.
Where it says, well, these are the names of the people we've taken in, and dated 1943. So we know that this happened, and we know certainly from John the 23rd when he was in Istanbul. And we know Archbishop Ratti and Palatucci. They all did the same thing. So the notion that the Pope had nothing to do with this is the square hole in a square peg in a round hole that some of these make-believe historians are trying to push.
Montini, who became Paul VI, he also was instrumental, which I didn't realize until I read some of your documentation, instrumental in this recovery effort and protection of the Jewish lives.
Absolutely. We have one letter from a lady, which the Vatican said, we can't verify this, you shouldn't put it in your book. We put it in the book anyway, because I said they sent it to us, where she swears in 1947, she went to an audience with her uncles, her whole family was there, and standing before Pius XII and Montini. And all of a sudden, the uncle looks at the Pope and says, you were dressed as a Franciscan, and you were dressed as a priest to Montini. You came into the ghetto and brought me into the Vatican. And Montini said, don't ever repeat that story again. I have the letter. And I said, look, I'm not going to say it actually happened. I said, it could have. We know what's happening now with Pope Francis. He's sneaking out and going to some of those poor sections. This happens. And I know that if learning about Pius XII as we have, that he didn't trust anything. He had to see it for his own eyes. He always had to double check. He had to be absolutely certain.
Let's talk about this Wolf article. Tell me about this and what we're seeing here.
Well, what we have is with General Karl Wolff was the commandant of Italy. He was actually Himmler's deputy. And we have the testimony. We went to Germany with our German representative, who, by the way, is a fantastic researcher for us, Michael Hesseman. And we have the testimony of Wolff, where he was ordered, and it's on our website. We have 76,000 pages, which you can download off our website, where it specifically says that Hitler called him in and ordered him to come up with a plan to invade the Vatican, kidnap the Pope, kill the Curia. And they came up with a very, very bright plan, but the German army, they weren't stupid. They knew, had this actually been ordered, there would be riots all over Europe in Catholic countries. They would not be able to contain these riots and so on. So they did everything to avoid getting, Hitler to order that invasion. That was actually the tool for that one day that Pius XII used to save the 12,000 Jews of Rome. Because he had threatened to speak out.
Tell me about this Kristallnacht telex that you've come across. What does this tell us?
The Kristallnacht telex was written 3 weeks after Kristallnacht, and Kristallnacht was in November of 1938. We know that after that date, there were about 204,000 Jews left in Germany. And so we have actually check marks next to the different nunciatures and so on. They sent this out to 65 bishops and nuncios, asking for visas, but they called them converted Italians. Now it says converted Hebrew Italians. Why is this important? Because under the Concordat, they were permitted to save converted Jews. They were considered Christians.
If they were Italians?
Any Jew who was converted would be, according to the 1933 Concordat.
Oh, okay.
And that was related to marriage and so on. But they used that diplomatically. They had to do something to protect themselves if that fell into the wrong hands. But he had sent this out to 65 bishops and nuncios asking for help, that we must take care of these people. But it was immediately followed up with another letter this is in January 9th of 1938.
It's amazing.
Where it asked for 200,000 visas. Again, for converted Italians in Germany. I mean, you'd have to be an idiot to say they wasn't talking about the Jews, but much more exciting. But it actually says in here in High Latin, because they would speak in Latin and everything else. In High Latin, the letter actually, the document says that when you get visas for these people and save them, you must not only save but you must respect their religious precepts, their religious books, and their religious ceremonies. Why would you say that about Catholics? You wouldn't say it.
No.
But interestingly, we have a letter from the Archbishop of Edinburgh, in English, responding to that January 9th letter. And then we have another one from here in Washington.
And what do they say?
Well, the one from Edinburgh says that, yes, we're going to do everything we can for the poor persecuted Jews.
They come right out and say it.
They said it. We have the same thing here in Washington where they were doing that. So we had responses to it. Unfortunately, they were not able to get the 200,000 visas they asked for. But it's not that they didn't try. That's the key. They tried. He tried.
Yeah,
and
Pius XII.
He tried. Actually, he was Secretary of State at the time. He was Cardinal Pacelli. So these are very, very, very significant. And not to be able to. The problem is a lot of these people who are critical, they put their professional reputations on the line, and they refuse to look at the evidence. Pave the Way had a symposium at Paris at the Sorbonne, where the first time we had the critics actually facing the defenders. We killed them. Killed them. Really? One professor from Bologna, who's supposedly a great church historian, gets up and he said, I refuse to let my students use documents as any form of evidence for historical accuracy. And one of the other professors got up and said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But that's what happened. The critics would come up with all kinds of stories. One from here in Washington, a woman who was from here in Washington, said that she was talking about a dream. Somebody related a dream an anti-Semitic dream that Pius XII had. I mean, what? I don't know where this stuff is coming from. It's bizarre. But we actually, our documents, and certainly from our book, because the book has really consolidated everything we have, shows that Pius XII was actively working to establish the modern state of Israel as early as 1917. Actually, it was Pius XII that ultimately approved for the Catholic votes in the partitioning of November of 1947 of the Holy Land.
Tell me about, before we have to move on, the General Stahl and Bishop Hudal letters. What do these tell us?
Okay. The letters are very, very significant. And again, our wonderful, wonderful director from Germany, Michael Hessemann, is the one that went through he went to the archives to pull these out. But they're very, very significant because a lot of people say that Pius XII did nothing. He remained silent as they took the 1,012 Jews from Rome.
The ghettos and moved them.
But they were actually not, they were supposed to go to Mauthausen as hostages. They were not supposed to go to I have the telegram from Germany ordering that. And it was Eichmann that overruled that and sent them off to the camps. Ooh. This is what happened. But it's very significant because after Pius XII officially protested to the German ambassador on the arrest that morning, October 16, 1943, he knew von Weizsäcker would do nothing and could do nothing. So what he did was, there was Bishop Alois Hudal, who was a Nazi-sympathizing bishop. He was the bishop of Santa Maria dell'Anima, the Austrian cathedral, and he actually sent, and they didn't get along. They, in fact, hated one another. Because we know this from Bishop Hudal's biography, his autobiography. He said that he was humiliated by him and so on. But he had sent his nephew, Carlo Pacelli, to meet with Bishop Hudal.
So and Pius XII sends his nephew to meet
and he said he ordered Bishop Hudal to write a letter to the commanding general of Rome, General Stahl, Rainier Stahl, that if he does not end the arrest of the Jews in Rome, that he was going to have to speak out vehemently against it. Now, we have the translation and the originals on our website, so they can be downloaded by anyone. But if you read it, it's amazing because he actually said he was close with the general.
Right.
And he said that, one day we may need the Catholic Church for something, so you have to realize this. So he had, the letter was then prepared, which we have in German, and then it was hand-delivered by Pancratius Pfeiffer, who was the head of the Salvatorians, also a German priest, to General Stahl. Stahl knew exactly what would happen because he said, Pius XII said he was going to speak out in protest against this. This is in my own diocese this is happening. And so he knew, had that happened, Hitler would have ordered the arrest, the invasion, would have caused all kinds of military catastrophes for the Germans all over Europe. And so he did everything to stop it. So we also have proof. We have the response from Stahl on the 17th that he acted immediately, called Himmler directly, and told him, and he used a military excuse why this can't be. Himmler ended the arrest immediately, and we have the notation. That's down here in German. But in the other letter from General Stahl, he does speak about Carlo Pacelli. He knows because there's a notation. And he also, had gotten the 450 white signs keeping German troops out of all ecclesiastical facilities.
We could spend all night going through all of this.
No, we could spend a couple of months.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Show me the cover of that magazine you have there. Tell us what that is before we go.
This is the May 1940 cover of the B'nai B'rith magazine, National Monthly. See, it says May, and it's May of 1940 with a picture of Pius XII on the front. And the article that was written is the Pope's Jewish scholars.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, the Pope was hiring, the Italian racial laws they were firing all the Jewish doctors and scholars and so on, and the Pope was hiring them. And that whole article was about 5 of the scholars that he had hired. These are the sort of things. This is what we found. And so when we speak to the critics, and there are a handful of them, most of them are now starting to wake up and realize that guess what, your reputation is now on the line, and I'm not a scholar or a historian, and I'm showing them that their reputation is on the line. They're starting to wake up. But there are those who still insist that he did nothing, but they cannot produce one document, not one primary source that he based everything on. Hitler's Pope, the same thing. All innuendo, all assumptions. The Holocaust, there was somebody who just wrote a book up in Rochester. And you look at the citations of the book, he's citing the Holocaust play, the deputy. He's citing John Cornwell, who was actually, we've already shown that most of that stuff has absolutely been discredited. His cover was a lie, you know.
Right.
So it's just amazing. The thing that's so disturbing to me is that, as a Jew, is that in Jewish law, the worst character flaw a Jew can have is ingratitude. And this is a responsibility. And I've said this to now 3 popes. Mary and I met with Pope Francis in November, and of course John Paul and Pope Benedict. This has nothing to do with the Catholic Church. This is a Jewish responsibility. It's what it is. And so the rabbis, all of the rabbis I speak to, everybody who sees this, everybody says, you're right, but, they're really afraid to do it. Attack me, I don't care. I have no reputation to defend.
Well, history's on your side.
History's
the fact
on my
is
side.
that Israel planted the forest in his honor.
They wanted to plant, actually, it was Pincus Lapida has proposed 840,000 trees in honor of Pius XII.
Wow.
Because of that was the
estimate?
The estimate under the rule of Pius XII, the Catholic Church, and that's throughout the world. We're talking about throughout the world, had done this. This doesn't happen by accident. People, the problem is that people actually said, or some of the critics say, well, it left it up to each individual priest and bishop. And
I know what you want to say.
I don't want to say it.
But you can't say it now.
No, it's just a bunch of bull. So
we'll leave it there. Gary Krupp, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and I'll be back with more.
For more on the work of Gary Krupp and the Pave the Way Foundation, particularly his research on Pius XII, visit their website at ptwf.org.